Welcome to Uncopyable Women in Business. I'm Kay Miller, also known as Muffler Mama. I've been the #1 salesperson in a male-dominated industry, a successful entrepreneur for over 30 years, and now my mission is to help you build a business and brand nobody else can compete with. If you're ready to break out of the pack and create your own uncopyable advantage, stay tuned. My guests and I are here to help. Welcome to part 2 of my delightful conversation with Leslie Lautenslager. Leslie's the author of My Time with General Colin Powell, Stories of Kindness, Diplomacy, and Protocol. Leslie worked closely with General Powell for over 25 years. And in this episode, she shares more of her personal experiences and fascinating stories. Stay tuned for a behind-the-scenes look at the man she affectionately calls my general. We are back with Leslie Lautenslager. She gave me points for getting that pronunciation right on the first try. I don't know what your official title with General Colin Powell was. Did you have an official title?
Well, event manager on the speaking circuit, but also doing more than just the speaking circuit. I was also in retirement, his executive assistant.
Okay.
It's almost like that for on paperwork, the Washington Speakers Bureau. It was executive assistant to General Colin Powell.
Okay.
At the State Department, I was the assistant chief of protocol for ceremonials and special assistant to the Secretary of State, which is a mouthful of a title. But what that meant, while he was Secretary of State, my staff and I were in charge of the aspect of protocol that took care of every time he hosted a chief of state, a head of government, foreign minister, diplomatic corps, or whatever, for breakfast, lunch, dinner, reception, ceremony. That's what my staff and I did, and which was pretty extraordinary. But when you asked about, was I ever intimidated? I used to laugh and say,
I just want to insert something here because you not only the logistics, art and science of protocol, diplomacy, tradition, respecting all kinds of different countries and cultures, but as you mentioned last time, General Powell would often say, "Leslie, make me smart." So you had a lot to do with, the content that he delivered and the research, all of those things. So I was wondering, what the heck do you call that?
well, General Powell he believed, and I wholeheartedly believe, titles can mean everything, and titles can mean absolutely nothing. So title was never really something that I ever spent much time writing about.
Because there wouldn't be one to describe what you did, I don't think.
I didn't. It's almost like you pick a title that will serve the audience. Pick the title that will serve the mission.
But, you did. It encompassed so much, including, I'd say, your friendship and how he relied on you for companionship. And, as I said, his whole family embraced you. You had a very playful, had a great sense of humor. I don't know the story that he called you in the middle of the night. What was that story?
So we were in China, and we had flown all night. Jet lag. We all know when you travel, jet lag can hit you at odd times. Well, I always was paranoid when we would travel, and I always was the one to give him a wake up call. When we would say good night the night before, it would be confirming, okay, Leslie, call me at 6 or whatever the time was. Well, I was always paranoid that I was going to sleep through my alarm. In a hotel, I would call the front desk and I would arrange with them to do a house call. I would set whatever alarm on the bedside table, which sometimes it was one of those exotic engineering clock radios that you can never figure out how to use, so didn't want to trust that. I would set the alarm on my phone. I would then also ask for room service to deliver breakfast or at least coffee right around the same time. So that way, feel safe, all these different things.
No kidding.
Meanwhile, I must have an internal clock too, because I would usually wake up 10 minutes before all that. So we've said goodnight. It's in Beijing, China. And I'm awakened out of a dead sleep with the phone ring. So I grab the phone. And it's General Powell. He's laughing. He's laughing. He goes, Leslie, you slept through your alarm, didn't you? Oh, my goodness. I apologize. And I'm so sorry, sir. Please forgive me. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll be ready in 5 minutes. So he's laughing. I say goodbye. I go into the bathroom, and I realize that even the seams around the shades of my window, it's still pitch black outside. I'm thinking, so I put on my glasses and I find my watch, or I look at the clock or whatever, and I march right back to the phone and I call the general and I bark at him. Sir, you're not wearing your glasses, are you? No, why? Sir, put on your glasses. What time is it? You tell me what time it is. What time does your clock say? I don't know. What time does it say? Sir, you tell me what time your clock says. 3 o'clock? Right. I will call you at 6. Goodbye.
Slam.
So that's another thing too. He was hysterically funny. I mean, everybody, and part of the reason I wrote the book is the world knew him as a revered military leader, a revered diplomat. Some people might remember that he was tremendously devoted to students and education, all these wonderful things. And historians will forever and always write about him. Political pundits will forever and always write about him. Biographers will forever and always write about him. But I knew him behind the scenes and behind the headlines. He was tremendously kind. He was tremendously funny. I mean, we were able to, I could yell at him on the phone when he gives me the 3 o'clock wake up call, trying to make me think that I've messed up. But he loved to laugh. I mean, he was really funny. He was a practical jokester. He loved Broadway. He could out-sing you any song from Abba.
That cracked me up. All these little morsels that Abba, I remember that one, and that he liked to sing and be a showman. And I mean, it's just, he was a piece of work.
And then I blush very easily, and he knew that, and he loved to take advantage of that as often as possible. So one of my favorite stories to share is the Tom Selleck story. And we were at a black tie gala event in Washington, D.C. General Powell had been asked to deliver awards to award winners at this big gala event. And Tom Selleck had also been invited to be an award presenter. So, as always, General Powell and I get to an event early, and we first have to go to the VIP reception. He was a master at working a room. It was far better to allow him to work a room that rather than take the time to have, the big boy or big girl, the CEO say, and General Powell, may I present you? Waste so much time that way. General Powell could just go in a room, work the room, spend time with everybody in the room very briefly, so you all felt that you've had a moment with him. And then he keeps moving. And as soon as he's done it, then he needs to get out of the room, because then they start swarming him. So at this point, we've worked the room. We escape the room. We go into the hold room, like a green room that had been set up for General Powell specifically, but then it would also be the rest of the head table. So we're just hanging out, which was normal. We could just hang out, the two of us. And then we have been told that Tom Selleck has arrived, but Tom Selleck has no Leslie with him. He's by himself. So he's now in the VIP reception, swarmed with all these people. General Powell and he were friends from the past. And General Powell said, Leslie, go see if Tom wants to join us. Just go save him, because he's being eaten alive by the VIPs. No, I've been in love with Tom Selleck since Magnum PI days when I was in college.
Understandable.
Yes. So I go in and I tap him on the shoulder. Excuse me, Mr. Selleck, I'm Leslie Lautenslager. I work with General Colin Powell. General Powell says, would you like to join him in the green room? And he, of course, says yes. So he follows me into the green room. Now, when it's not just General Powell, it's me. In this case, I put on the protocol hat, and I become invisible. I fade into the woodwork, fade into the wallpaper. So Tom Selleck and General Powell backslot, being their old friends, and they're catching up, whatever. And I'm hiding in the corner, or just, standing aside. Well, then we're joined by the rest of the head table people. So another, like, eight other people. And again, the gentlemen are in black tie. The ladies are in twinkly sequins and high heels. And this one woman comes in, and she goes right away to General Powell, hugs and kisses. Oh, Colin, then we're so happy to see you. Whatever. And then she proceeds to tell the rest of the head table guests that, Colin Powell saved my life once. And she goes on to tell a story, which actually I had heard General Powell tell me the night it happened, and tell me many times since then. And apparently she and he had had fun telling the story to anybody who listens. They had been seated at a White House dinner one night, and this woman choked on chicken. And it was a bad choke that she would have died had somebody not saved her with the Heimlich maneuver. General Powell, of course, sprang to his feet, did the Heimlich maneuver, saved her life. Everybody lives happily ever after. The woman is having great fun telling the story. And after everybody stops laughing, Tom Selleck says, now Tom Selleck, big, beautiful, 6'4" Tom Selleck, black tie. Next to big, beautiful, 6'1" General Powell in black tie. Tom Selleck says, I live in fear that someday somebody's going to die because I do not know how to do the Heimlich maneuver. Somebody's going to die because we'll get choked at a dinner seated with me, and the person will die because I do not know how to do the Heimlich maneuver. General Powell, as soon as I see the twinkle come into his eye, I know what's coming. General Powell says, Tom, puts his arm around Tom's shoulders and said, Tom, tonight's your lucky night. I'm going to teach you the Heimlich maneuver.
And gee, who's going to help?
He snaps his fingers, calls me. Again, I'm in the wallpaper. I'm in the corner. He says, Leslie, come here. Of course, I am black tie attire as well, high heels. He stands me up right in front of Tom, grabs Tom's long, beautiful arms, puts them around me, and then proceeds to tell Tom, no, squeeze higher. No, Tom, squeeze lower. No, just squeeze. And so I'm silent as a lamb, but I am bright red. And, in my General House, great fun. He's a great practical joker. And he's very funny. So the world does not realize that about.
Yeah, well, that's very,
general.
That is, he obviously had a mischievous personality and, and fun and knew exactly who would be a good person to pick on. That's, that's what comes through in this book too, that you were friends, that you had this respect and relationship. And as you said, we all have an impression of him, Dr. We all have an impression of General Powell, but it's not that side of him. So I think this book.
This or this?
Yes, sir.
It was wonderful.
So I do want to delve in though a little bit now.
Of course, please.
How the heck did you do all that? I mean, when you first found out that you would be working with him, or even protocol, were there times in your career and your life that you were afraid and you said, I can't do this, or help us out? Those of us who can't do that.
I'll tell you this, two quick things about, did I know what I was getting into? And then I'll tell you a time of being frightened.
Okay.
When I first joined the Office of Protocol back in 1986, 87, I was delighted. I mean, I was just, wow, I didn't know this career existed. And to work at the U.S. Office of the Chief of Protocol, that was pretty eye-opening for this little girl from Virginia, a provincial little girl from Virginia. I, had been on an airplane all of 2 times in my life. My family vacations were on the East Coast. I hadn't even gone further west in the United States than this side of West Virginia. But when I was at Protocol, and one of the first events I was going to be a part of was going to be the state visit of the King and Queen of Sweden. In my little naive 23-year-old brain, I was thinking, I would love to just be able to see the King and Queen through a crowd thinking, wow, I will have arrived if I can just have sight of, a European queen coming to the United States. Well, lo and behold, no, my position, and I was a little tiny little junior protocol officer, but my task, I actually was going to be up close and personal with them. It wasn't that I was going to see them in a crowd. I had a task where I was actually, the task was maybe nothing more than being at the elevator to say right this way, but nonetheless, I was with European royalty.
Right.
Having no idea that, no, I am one of the worker bees. I am one of the team on behalf of the United States of America that takes care of the world leaders. And that was this profession. Oh my golly, is this even possible? It's like a fairy tale. Then when I was offered the job to work at the Washington Speakers Bureau to take care of General Colin Powell, I grew up in Northern Virginia. I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area. So I'm used to headline makers. And this is also many years after I worked in an administration, worked for President Reagan, and suddenly the reality is, no, I'm not looking at king and queen from a football field away. I'm actually,
you don't need binoculars.
I'm serviceable for the task. But I was used to the big boys, big girls, as I always say, as being surrounded by entourages. When I took the job with Washington Speakers Bureau, I fully and firmly believed that I would not be talking with General Powell directly. I would be talking with his and working through his entourage of a bazillion people. What I didn't know is that when General Powell retired from the military, and as chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and I'm making the number up, but I think I'm almost accurate, as chairman of the Joint Chiefs, he was responsible for 1 million people in uniform and families and things, but he was in charge of 1 million people. And his immediate entourage was 90 people. So even in retirement, I assume he's got people who have people.
Right.
Now, in reality, when I first started back then, did have a small staff, and Bill Smolin and Peggy Sofrino, his chief of staff and his deputy chief of staff, and a couple others, and they were phenomenal and are phenomenal people and talented. But certainly I worked with them. But no, General Powell would call me directly. And no, General Powell wanted me to call him directly. There was no entourage that I was going through. So again, 1,000 years ago, when I started in protocol at the State Department under Ronald Reagan and like Roosevelt and George Shultz as Secretary of State, I was up close and personal with the leaders and whatnot. All the years go by, and I'm with the Washington Speakers Bureau taking care of General Powell in the speaking circuit. And I'm staffing General Powell. It's direct. So how did I do it? I don't know. Just throw in the deep end of the pool and you learn to swim, and you do. But you asked,
you ended up meeting, and you talked about Tom Selleck, so many celebrities and world leaders and dignitaries and traveling the world. Oh my gosh, the life of adventure.
So, but I'll also say, and I wear this badge proudly, being what I call a protocol professional, that I know my place though. Protocol it's not about us. It's General Powell. I'm not General Powell. I'm in the background. I'm the wallpaper, or whomever, fill in the blank of whomever it is. The protocol profession is you are servicing, the leadership. You are servicing the organizations and the cultures and the countries, trying to bring them together. Not about us. We're maybe the grease that keeps the wheels rolling, or the glue that builds the relationships, sticks them together. But it's not about Leslie. It's not about those of us. We're not in the spotlight. We're just outside of the camera range. We're on the other side of the picture, camera range. But you're right.
Except when Tom Selleck gives you the Heimlich maneuver.
Exactly. But I don't take it lightly. You're absolutely right. I was very blessed, very fortunate, very lucky to be able to be a confidant and close to somebody who was so incredibly gifted and important.
I want to take a quick break to invite you to download my free mini guide. It's called Stand Out or Step Aside, 5 Uncopyable Moves You Can Make Today. Download yours at beuncopyable.com/K. Now, back to the show.
You asked about was I ever frightened? And I'm sure there were many times, but one particular time that I do write about in the book, we were, the only time I was ever physically frightened, we were in Nigeria, and we had flown by commercial plane into one airport, and we had to take like the government of Nigeria had then a private plane for us to take in another city. But it would be like the difference between here in Washington, would be the difference between Washington Reagan National Airport and Washington Dulles, which is a good, 35-minute drive away. So we are driving between two airports in Nigeria. And we're on these roads that are packed shoulder to shoulder with just pedestrians in the roadways, overflowing from the sidewalks. I don't remember that there was a demonstration. I don't remember. Maybe it was marketing. I don't know. I don't remember why there were crowds in the street. It may have just been a normal day. But amongst the people in the crowds walking along the side of our cars were men in fatigues and machine guns. And they're close enough to touch our cars. And we're in the back seat of the car. General Powell, of course, is sitting on my right. And I've got my purse in my lap. And I don't know that there's anything. And General Powell never even looks my way, looking out the windows, like just looking at the day. And quietly, again, never looks my way, never says a word to me, but quietly just reaches over and grabs my purse from my lap. And very quietly and very slowly puts my purse under his feet. And the foot and the where his feet are in the back seat. And it was chilly. He never said a word. He never, even made eye contact with me, but just that one gesture was as telling as if he had said a mouthful of words.
But yeah, two things. I mean, there was something to be afraid of, and I'm sure he would have laid down his life for you if, that's who he was, anyone. So yeah, I'm sure there were many times that you had some level of fear, but you pushed through it. As you said, you throw somebody in the deep end and hope that they swim.
Well, showing my fear, but also his sense of humor. We were in Japan. And we were in Tokyo, and it was like the night before we were to fly home the next day, I guess. And our host had us for dinner on the first floor, a very nice restaurant, on the first floor of our high-rise hotel. About 10 people, and it was just, the big event of the day had been finished, and this was just a private dinner honoring the general, and I was included, which is not always the case, but they included me for this. About 10 of us at this table, and we have an earthquake, which, okay, you're out in California. You have earthquakes all the time. So
Seattle, but yeah, it's earthquake country.
Right. So that's in your DNA. You can, it's no big deal. This little girl from Virginia has experienced exactly one earthquake, and it made headlines because it was in Virginia. And it was enough it was the one that even cracked the Washington Monument, and the National Cathedral had some damage. For the East Coast, that was a pretty big earthquake. So that's my whole experience. So we had this earthquake in Japan, and I'm seated like 3 seats away from General Powell. And as soon as it happens, I think we're like in the main course at this point, and I jump up and I run over to General Powell, and I put my hand on his shoulders and goes, "Sir, that's an earthquake. I'll take care of you." And he looked at me and he laughs. And of course, everybody else there lives in Tokyo. And so for them, it's like no big deal. Whatever it was, 3.6 or whatever some miniature little earthquake would be. And their buildings are constructed so that it's okay. And so the general then turns to the the host, and says, "See what I have to put up with?" Leslie thinks she can hold up a building for me.
Well,
No, it
that's
was
pretty funny.
the
This, yeah, big tall. I'm going to protect you. But, that was your job too. You saw that as part of your job. You were taking care of him. And I'm sure he would have been the one taking care of you if Colin did really fall.
Yeah. Who knows what comes out of your mouth when you're in a situation like that? That was like
right.
First thing
You don't know. You don't know. I was thinking of the pictures in this book. So when you buying it, when you buy this book, and oh my gosh, the picture ones don't have page numbers. So the pictures start on 126. Lovely picture of the two of you together. The first posed picture. If there's a few pages in, there are two pictures that really struck me. One says briefing Secretary Powell on the official plane en route to Kiev. Did I say that right? For the inauguration of the Ukrainian president, January 2005. Now he is listening to you. You guys are in deep conversation, I would say. But to your point, here's another picture right below. You are in the background. So all of these pictures, you are either in the family portrait or with him, or quite a few instances, you were there. You were there in the background, and you were very intent on doing your job.
I did my best.
You did apparently a great job because, he valued you so much. And yes, and you talk about gifts, giving a gift with this diplomacy or protocol. And yes, it's such a gift of everyone's important. You're important. Your culture, your traditions, all of those things are worth respecting. And as we get to the end of this, I just want to talk a little bit about, you had mentioned, and I looked it up, that Madeleine Albright spoke at Colin Powell's funeral. And I want you to just talk a little bit about that and the relationships that he had with people.
Thank you. Thank you. I will be delighted to share. General Powell and Madeleine Albright, both were secretaries of state. Madeleine Albright was Secretary of State for the previous administration and for the Clinton administration. And then General Powell was Secretary of State for George W. Bush 43. And they had worked together. Again, General Powell had been swimming in the deep end of the pool for many years. I mean, he worked for President Reagan, President Bush 41, President Clinton, and then President Bush 43. And Madeleine Albright had various positions through several administrations. And so they knew each other. But then when General Powell became Secretary of State, they now suddenly had an opportunity to have shared the same portfolios. And even though they came from different sides of the aisle, she had represented a Democratic president, and General Powell was representing a Republican president, although he represented both presidents when he was in the military. When, in military, they're not supposed to even acknowledge if they have a political leaning. But then in retirement, once he retired from the military, he did acknowledge that he identified at the time as a Republican. So he's serving as Secretary of State for a Republican administration. She had served as Secretary of State for a Democratic administration. But they were exceptional human beings and exceptional Americans in that they may have had differing views on certain policies at times, but they had such commonality and devotion to country, and devotion to the American people and the American position in the world. So after State Department and on the speaking circuit, Madeleine Albright was also a speaker on the speaking circuit. And what was absolutely delightful would be when an organization, it could be a big bank, it could be a national association of XYZ, it could be whatever, it could be a university. So often, it was such a pleasure when an organization would invite both former Secretary of State Madeleine Albright, former Secretary of State Colin Powell, to appear in like a fireside chat discussion on stage. And an audience was then brought into this wonderful devotion. They were friends and they had great admiration for each other. They had great fun picking on each other and not like little jokes on the stage, but they could really have fun at each other's expense. But there was an admiration, appreciation, a respect for each other that I think we all could do better to embrace. We all could do so much better if we could be like General Powell and Dr. Albright and be able to respect each other's differences, but come together and be so close. And to share the plane with them, it was always fun. They were always telling stories and whatnot. And then the morning that, well, actually, the General Powell was diagnosed with COVID on a Monday. And it was the following Monday that he passed. But all that week, when he went by ambulance to the hospital after he was diagnosed with COVID, this is to Walter Reed Military Hospital, I called Dr. Albright because I knew she needed to hear that about her friend who was sick and all that week she called me to check on her friend. How's Colin today? Would please give him my love. And then the morning he died, and he died before 5 or around 5 in the morning, and I got the notification right away, and then I called my family right away, and then one of the next people I called was Dr. Albright, because I didn't want her to hear it in the news. She had to hear it from somebody who loved him and loved her, and she was so dear when I told her, and she was heartbroken. She was heartbroken, but she was so dear to me. As I'm sobbing, telling her, she said, "No, Leslie, you have my love. You have my love," and this is horrific. And then, sure enough, she spoke beautifully at his funeral. And then a year and a half after, she passes, and I was able to help with her funeral as well. But they were two pillars of world leaders, two pillars of American, the best of us. The best of us. But and it was testament to both of them, both of their leadership, but their friendship.
That gives me goosebumps. That really does. It's touching, and it makes me feel like, yeah, that's what it's all about. Colin Powell, Madeleine Albright too. Special, very, very special people with a huge impact on everyone they met and so many people they didn't meet. Leslie,
that's another reason why I wrote the book. Let me add this real quickly.
Go ahead.
2 years before he died, he would tease me. I would tease him too. So it wasn't a one-way street. I would tease him, he'd tease me. But he would tease me, Leslie, he would kind of poke at my shoulder. Leslie, you got to write a book. And I would get in my little prim and proper protocol high horse, and I would say, yes, sir, I will write a book one day. It'll be about protocol. And he would yawn, and he would exaggerate a roll of the eyes. And he would say, but Leslie, you've got to write about me. You want it to sell, don't you? Now, so much of, I worked with him for 25 and a half years. That's over a quarter century. And as a side note, my father died when I was 8. So I actually had General Powell 3 times longer than I had my own father. So he was almost a surrogate father for me. But so much of what I did, whether it was on the speaking circuit or at the State Department, so much of what I did, on top of anything else I did, everything I did was with the idea that I was protecting his privacy and his family's privacy. So the idea of writing about him was actually abhorrent to me. The idea of writing a book about him, absolutely no, in God's green earth. But grief is a funny thing. And, as much as he would tease me about it, about a year, almost to the exact week, 1-year anniversary after he died, I came full circle. And I was hearing his voice in my head saying, Leslie, you got to write about me. You got to write a book about me. And I came full circle and realized that not only could I write about him, not to do so would be horrifically and inexcusably selfish. Because again, the world knew him as a revered military leader and a revered diplomat, but they didn't know the behind the scenes and the behind the headlines guy that I knew. He was funny. He was caring. He was kind. He was a practical jokester, stand-up comedian. He loved hot dogs. He loved Abba. He loved Broadway. But he was kind and dear and just the epitome of he embodied so many characteristics that we should all emulate and we should all embrace, and we could all do better to hold these virtues that he so much embodied.
I agree. Something to aspire to. And his whole family. Look at the back cover. His son and daughter. I know he had several children. 3 children, I think.
3 children and another wonderful daughter, Linda, who's an actress. She's wonderful. But
Yeah,
Anne-Marie and Michael.
So they also really encouraged you to share their... Go ahead.
Well,
Yeah.
I should also say, too, that so it was with encouragement from the family. So after he died, I kept working with the family for a year and a half, whatnot. But in conversations with the family, oh, yeah, I'll write a book one day. And I would say, no, I can't. And anyway, when I then came full circle and realized that not only could I, that I really felt that not to do so would be selfish, I, at that point, definitely approached the family. I said, listen, I'm thinking about doing this, but I promise you I will not write a word if this is something you all do not want, don't think it's a good idea, wish that I wouldn't do. And they wholeheartedly said, no, you can do it. And maybe it'll be allow readers a view of him that is special and different from what you can read from any book written about it. When I had their blessing.
Yes, you had their blessing and beyond. And
their blessing.
When I read this book, I thought, boy, Leslie was the right person for this job.
Well, you're very kind.
Not only did the job, went beyond throwing yourself over him to protect the earthquake, but the relationship you had. I mean, that everybody's different. You know, maybe somebody else could have done the job, but I just don't feel like they could have done it like you did.
Let me add one thing too. When I said that when he went into retirement after the military, but then fast forward when he left the State Department, and then even then, still not an entourage, but I want to at least put in the plug. I took care of General Powell on the international speaking circuit, and I took care of a lot of the social side of things for Mrs. Powell and a lot of the personal stuff. But he had his one other assistant. I mean, he were literally in General Powell had 2 of us who worked with him, and his other assistant, Peggy Sofrino, she took care of all of his board work, and he was involved in several boards as directors. She took care of all his board work and all of his media. And so she did a phenomenal job taking care of that part of his life. So it was like an apple and an orange. And we both were very devoted to him, either both his right arms or both to her being a right arm and a left arm. But, you know, he empowered those around him. And as a testament to him, he just didn't need an entourage. He, you know, was very hands-on. And so, but I was very lucky.
Yes. And you give, I can't remember her name. You give her props in the book and a picture. What is her name again?
Peggy Sofrino.
Peggy. Okay, Peggy. And I won't say the last name. but you two were a blessing to each other, for sure. And this book is a blessing to all of us. So I encourage you really listening to read this book. You will be so glad you did. And it's just a refreshing look at what the possibilities. The possibilities.
Well, but the book is, you know, it's on Amazon, so easily foundable in a paperback, hardback, Kindle, and audio. And when my agent said, "Oh, and we're getting ready to do the audio," this was about a year ago, to the audio, and I thought, okay, well, then what do I need to do? She was very kind and very gentle, and she said, "Leslie, you know what? we have found it works best to have a professional reader do the audiobooks. She's, again, very kind, very gentle, but she's very right, because there are plenty of, especially the first part of the book is very funny, telling all the funny stories behind the scenes, the Tom Selleck story and their other stories. But there's no way I could tell the funny stories and not. And then by the end of the book, the last 3 chapters in general, but specific the last chapter, which is about his death and the funeral, there's no way I could read that last chapter and not sob, which would make, of course, any listener sob. So it's best. Professional reader. It's not me.
And you did talk about writing the last chapter first, and I can see why you had to do that. It would have been hanging over your head, I think, the whole time. And just how emotional that was.
When I was writing it, the publisher, my collaborator, said, in getting ready, I don't know, well, you certainly know about writing and doing proposals and publishing, which I don't know how many of your readers know, but that's a whole time for another podcast, another talk about the publishing world, which is a whole nother world. But trying to get the proposal ready to market around or to shop around with different publishers, having to do 2 chapters to be part of the proposal. And I was asking for guidance. I said, okay, chapter number 1, of course, but then what is the second chapter? Does it have to be technically chapter number 2, or is it something else? But the guidance was, no, Leslie, do the last chapter first. And actually my collaborator, Brad Harper, who's a retired Army colonel, said, no, for this book, do the last chapter first, because it's going to be the hardest chapter. But after that, everything will be, easy sailing. Not that writing's easy, but his point was the last chapter, because it was going to be so personal, because it's General Powell's death and the funeral, do that last chapter first and make that the second chapter. And he was right, because then I spent 4 days, and this is not an exaggeration, I spent 4 days writing the last chapter, sobbing over the keyboard, sobbing, getting through it. But it was right. Once I got that, then it made the rest so much easier.
Very wise advice. Well, thank you for sharing General Colin Powell with us in a way we never would have known. And
okay, thank you for having me. This has been a delightful chat.
You are delightful. And just, as I said, I want to give you props, even though you say, oh yeah, you were behind the scenes. It wasn't about you. It was about you. It was about you. He couldn't have done what he did without you. Hey, I'm going to give you the props for that. So I appreciate Patricia Fripp for introducing us. I appreciate you for honoring me with your presence and willingness to be on my show. And I once again encourage everyone to buy the book. I'll put are there other links besides Amazon that you would prefer people to buy?
I know you can do it through Barnes and Noble online. And what I trying to, and I think you're a much more experienced author than I am, and you and your husband, but I have also learned that if you go to like your independent bookstores and you could say, I want to buy this book and I want to give my business to you, they'll order it for you. So I want to always give tip of the hat to independent bookstores as best I can. But it just takes a little effort to do that when it's easy enough to go on your computer and order online.
Right. Oh, we agree. Support independent bookstores.
Absolutely.
They are actually making a comeback from what I hear. And there's nothing like sitting in a bookstore. But buy it anyway. I like to support other book authors by buying the book. So
yes, please.
Leslie,
thank you. It's right before Christmas. Good for stocking stuffers.
Oh, that's right. Yes. Well, I don't know that this episode will be out before Christmas, but
then Valentine's and Mother's Day and birthdays and graduation presents.
That's right. And probably available in bulk. So there you go. Leslie, thank you so much once again for being on the podcast.
Thank you, Kay.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Uncopyable Women in Business. If you enjoyed it, please follow, rate, and review the show. And be sure to visit beuncopyable.com/K. Always remember, be uncopyable.